One moment could be a mistake, two might raise questions, but what happened with Meghan Markle throughout this entire event started to look like a pattern. Moment 1, the parade incident. Let's start with the parade, because what happened at the 2023 Invictus Games in Dusseldorf on day 6 was not just awkward, it was a calculated power move dressed up as a wardrobe malfunction. Meghan Markle stepped ahead of the parade, not beside the veterans, not behind them, but ahead, dressed in a short jumpsuit, cream blazer, and Saint Laurent leather slippers instead of anything appropriate for a solemn military procession, wearing Bottega Veneta earrings and Lorraine Schwartz diamonds. She looked less like a supporter of wounded warriors and more like she had wandered off a Fashion Week runway. One parade, one agenda, and it had nothing to do with the veterans behind her. But the parade was not about her. It was about wounded service personnel who sacrificed everything, men and women who lived through the horrors of war. And Meghan stepped ahead of them in shorts, so short that spectators stopped and stared. That is not fashion. That is disrespect wearing a blazer. The application is simple. If you genuinely respect the people you are standing with, you let them lead. You fall back. You disappear into the occasion. Meghan did the exact opposite. And why? Because there was a Netflix camera crew rolling. The moment the camera showed up, so did the front row positioning. Onlookers watched. Some veterans felt uncomfortable. Some spectators questioned whether she understood where she was. This matters because it was not a one-off mistake. It was a pattern. And the next moment is where that pattern becomes impossible to ignore. She moved ahead of veterans on day 6. But wait, she also brought her own photographer to a charity event for wounded soldiers. Moment 2, the photographer question. Let that sink in for a second. Meghan Markle reportedly brought a personal photographer to the Invictus Games. Not a shared press photographer, not the official event media, her own. Sitting right behind her in the stands as she watched wheelchair basketball beside Harry's childhood friend Nikki Scott. The photo went viral, and suddenly the internet had a very uncomfortable question. Who called him there? Royal expert Ingrid Seward did not hold back. She expressed skepticism about whether Meghan should have attended at all, noting that, intentionally or not, Meghan's presence consistently pulls focus away from the actual cause. That is a royal expert, not a tabloid voice. Someone who has studied the institution for decades. But here's the conflict. This was supposed to be about the veterans. The Invictus Games exist to honor wounded service personnel, to use the power of sport for rehabilitation, for recovery, for hope. That is the mission. Therefore, when the dominant media coverage of the 2023 Invictus Games focused on Meghan's outfits, Meghan's photographer, Meghan's body language, and Meghan's interactions with Harry, the veterans became background characters in their own story. A hashtag started trending on X, formerly Twitter, Veterans Deserve Better. Not started by critics, not started by the press, started by ordinary people who saw something deeply wrong. They asked a simple question. If asked to name 5 gold medal winners from Invictus 2023, could the average person do it? Almost nobody could, but they knew every outfit Meghan wore that week. That is not a coincidence. That is a public relations strategy. And it worked, for her, not for them. The photographer, the parade position, the outfits, all deliberate. But there is one moment that made even veterans visibly angry. Moment 3, the march with veterans. The closing parade, the award ceremony, the moment Meghan Markle marched side by side with veterans. Not as a veteran, not as active military, as a civilian, as a duchess who left the working royal family and relocated to California. She marched shoulder to shoulder with men and women who had given everything. The reaction online was furious, not just from commentators, but from people who served, from families of veterans, from ordinary viewers who watched and felt something was wrong. One commentator said it clearly. This showed very little respect for what those veterans had been through. You do not insert yourself into a military procession because the camera is pointed there, but Meghan did. And the framing matters, because this is not just bad optics. It shows what the Invictus Games had become in this context, a backdrop, a public relations stage. Even commentary noted that the closing ceremony speech Harry gave played to nearly empty seats. The cameras were tight, the clips looked full, but step back and the reality was clear. Attendance was low, and the veteran stories were overshadowed. Empty stadium seats. A personal photographer. Shorts at a military parade. It gets worse. Moment 4. The Netflix connection. Let's talk about the Netflix angle, because this is where the motivation becomes clear. The documentary Heart of Invictus was produced through a partnership involving Netflix, Harry's production company, and the Invictus Games Foundation. That sounds positive, but here is the word that raised questions. Compensation. The official wording stated that compensation would be redirected to the foundation, not profits, not revenue. Compensation. Critics pointed out that this language was vague and unclear, so the question became, were they being paid to attend the very event that Harry founded? Were the games also functioning as a production environment? Therefore, every staged moment, the parade positioning, the marching, the outfit changes takes on a different meaning. It was not just attendance, it looked like production. And the veterans risked becoming secondary in that process. Moment 5. The public backlash. A commentator named Paul Belgium shared a viral post during the games. He pointed out that the Invictus Games exist to honor the struggles and achievements of those who experienced war, yet the faces dominating coverage were Meghan and Harry. He challenged people to name 5 gold medalists. Most could not, but many could recall multiple outfits worn during the event. The conflict is clear. Harry founded these games in 2014 after visiting the Warrior Games in the United States. It was built on a real idea with real purpose. But without official royal roles, what remained was the public image, the brand. Reports claim that on some days, multiple outfit changes occurred. The value of those outfits was widely discussed. The key question remained, why did a charity event for wounded soldiers turn into a fashion spotlight? The answer, for many observers, was that it should not have. The focus should have remained on the participants, individuals competing, recovering, and rebuilding their lives. Instead, attention shifted elsewhere. Moment 6. The bigger pattern. The final moment is not a single scene. It is the combination of everything. Critics, experts, and viewers reached similar conclusions that the Invictus Games, at least in perception, became part of a broader media narrative rather than remaining fully centered on its original mission. The trending phrase said it clearly: veterans deserve better. It reflected a wider concern about focus and representation. Whether intentional or not, the outcome led to questions about priorities, visibility, and respect. 6 moments. One consistent pattern. A global event meant to honor wounded warriors became overshadowed by media attention on individuals rather than participants. And the real question remains, in future events, will the spotlight return to where it truly belongs?